Hey everybody, welcome to the program WRSA Radio. I am your host, Grenadier One. As always, I hope you've been having a good week. I'm doing well myself. Success on the home search. Very soon I will be moving into a new home, my wife and I. So there are probably going to be a couple of weekends coming up that I either do not have a show or the show's delayed in posting. Just wanted to kind of get that out there. Next Friday is going to be one of those times. We have some things that we have to get done, and we will be very busy that whole weekend. Things related to moving in the house and everything. So I just don't think that I can get a show ready and recorded and posted and everything. It's just going to be, a full couple of days for me. So just wanted to let you know that ahead of time, kind of throw that out there. So no one will be looking for a show next Friday evening. Anyway, let's get on with the regular program. So this week is one of those weeks that the show kind of put itself together. I didn't have to think too long and hard about this one, as it kind of pulls together some of what we're talking about last week and things I've been reading, as well as ongoing events. And we are, of course, going to be discussing Ukraine again, as it's the kind of 1,000-pound elephant in the room, if you will. This last week, I've been reading a book by Dr. Joseph Farrell called Babylon's Banksters: The Alchemy of Deep Physics, High Finance, and Ancient Religion. This is a fascinating book, and it ties so many threads together, and it explains so much about what is going on and why things are kind of playing out the way that they are these days. And it tracks very close to things I've been talking about and really my line of overall thinking on a lot of subjects. This book was published back in 2010. So keep that in mind when I bring up some points later. That's kind of an important, kind of shows you how the outlook and how it meshes and tracks with reality, I guess you could say. Last week on the show, I brought up the topic of perception being reality. Now, of course, reality is reality, but how we think about things and how we react to them and make our decisions about them is significantly influenced by how we perceive those things. So in effect, if we act and comport ourselves as if something was true, then in almost every way it is true. When the world sees what is taking place in Ukraine, and the information war convinces the rest of the world that Ukraine is defeating Russia, the rest of the world begins to accept that Ukraine is winning and that the Russians are weak and can be defeated. The world now believes that Russia is being defeated, and while it may take time to complete, the other nations of the world are beginning to assume that this is going to happen. They're just looking at it as being, well, this whole conflict is now bogged down into a stalemate, and Russia's bungling this, and it's all just, they're showing how terrible they are. Now, Concerned American has posted a couple of items over on the mothership that we're gonna take a look at. And the first is an article posted originally on Bloomberg. It's called "Putin Misunderstands History, So Unfortunately Does the U.S." This article basically suggests that both sides of this event are looking back in history and incorrectly applying lessons to the current conflict. It's a very good article in spite of it being over on Dumberg, but so if you get a chance, if you didn't see it yesterday posted on the mothership, go over there and click on it and read through this thing, because it is kind of laying out some really good points. Some key graphs from this article, and I'm going to quote from it, but I'll let you know the quotes and everything. In talking about how the Biden administration is conducting itself in this whole situation, they quote, the author of the article quotes an unnamed source, a senior administration official, And he says, the only endgame now, a senior administration official was heard to say at a private event earlier this month, is the end of Putin regime. Until then, all the time Putin stays, Russia will be a pariah state that will never be welcomed back into the community of nations. China has made a huge error in thinking Putin will get away with it. Seeing Russia get cut off will not look like a good vector, and they'll have to reevaluate the Sino-Russian axis. All this is to say that democracy and the West may well look back on this as a pivotal strengthening moment. End quote. These people are delusional. These are 21st century diplomats who believe that, economic sanctions and other non-military actions are sufficient to crack Russia, or really sufficient to crack any nation. These are people who are so wrapped up in the idea of group acceptance that they believe that other nations will be just broken by the fact that they're not accepted by the West. This is the insanity that we're dealing with, in our clown administration. They fully believe that they can utilize Ukraine to weaken Putin and the Russian military, and this will result in opportunities to replace Putin with a more globo-friendly leader. The article, however, points out that the economic sanctions don't look like they're working because of a few little problems. And it says, quote, "Yet, so long as European Union countries refuse to impose an energy embargo on Russia, Putin's regime continues to receive around 1.1 billion a day, billion with a B, from the EU in oil and gas receipts." And the author says, "I remain skeptical that the sanctions as presently constituted can either halt the Russian war machine or topple Putin. Why has the ruble not fallen further and even rallied against the euro last week?" End quote. Why indeed? Why is that happening? Now, the other side of the situation that this article gets into, it says, Putin applies history, quote, "Putin applies history in a diametrically opposite way. The president has completely lost interest in the present," the Russian journalist Mikhail Zygar argued in a recent New York Times piece. The economy, social issues, the coronavirus pandemic, these all annoy him. Instead, he and his advisor Kovlachuk obsess over the past. End quote. What exactly are Putin and his advisors obsessing over? Well, according to the article, Putin is obsessed about Western hypocrisy and also preoccupied with the idea of returning Russia to its old imperial glory. Now, the article implies that this is somehow wrong or it's backward thinking, although the author does acknowledge that this is a significant point of difference between how the West and the East think. Putin is not a 21st century person. This brings us to the other item that CA posted that you need to go watch. That being the video, which is from 2016, I believe, 2016. So well before the current events and based off the situation in Ukraine as it was shortly after the coup that took place. And the breakaway republics, leaving the Crimea, all those kind of things happening about that time. This video is Professor John Mearsheimer delivering a lecture at the University of Chicago, and it is fantastic. I agree with Concerned American. I did not watch the Q&A. I watched the first 45 minutes of the video, which is his lecture, and then they get into Q&A, and I'm not a big fan of Q&A being on videos. Sometimes they're good and sometimes they're just done really, really terrible. You can't hear the questions and things like that. So I didn't stick around for that. But the discussion, the lecture is excellent. It is, in this video, he really hits on some major points, just one after the other, about the history of this conflict. And he's laying out everything before it happens. It's what pushed Russia into this attack. One of the points he makes is that Putin is just that. He is not a 21st century guy, that he is a 19th century guy. and that he operates in the world of, the politics of strategic deterrence. Provocations have consequences. Unlike the article, which implies that this is somehow a wrong or incorrect way of looking at the world, Mearsheimer correctly states that this is the way that the West thought and conducted itself until fairly recently, and that it is just, this juxtaposition of mindsets that is likely to push us towards nuclear conflict. It's, like I said, it's just insanity. The clowns that we have up there in charge. And this goes deeper than the current administration. This is just what has infested the bureaucracy, the State Department in particular, for many years now, many years. Now, something that he also hits on while he is laying out what his suggestions are for how to deal with the Ukrainian position in relation to NATO and Russia, he says something that hit me this week and made me consider something I had read in Babylon's Banksters. He says, in quote, "In fact, if you want to harm Russia, then you encourage them to invade and wreck Ukraine." So think about that for a minute. A way to weaken and bring down Russia would be to encourage them to attack Ukraine. And again, this is 2016. So, like I said, this video it predates what's going on. When we look back with some hindsight, does it not look like NATO and the U.S. basically did just that? When you put this together with the ideas that are coming out of the Biden administration, what I was quoting earlier from the article, I think we're onto something here. It's becoming clearer to me that Ukraine was intentionally set up to be a sink, a briar patch. This was not just the West reacting to this situation as it happened and deciding, well, we can't get as involved as we would like to, but we can continue to ship weapons and volunteers into there and just devastate the Russian army. It's not that. It's not a reaction. That's what they're doing. The plan was to provoke the Russian invasion so that they could then shift into this phase of tacitly backing the Ukrainians and participating in the war from afar in an attempt to destroy the Russian army. Phase 3, I believe, is going to be to instigate a color revolution in Russia and using a full array of information warfare, that perception being reality, convince the Russian people and the rest of the world that the Russian people hate Putin and want him overthrown. And the end result, as the insider quoted in that article, is regime change in Russia. Now, there's a problem here, however, as at the same time the West is pursuing this course of action, we are ourselves collapsing under our own weight. We have created so much fake money and so many fake investment products, that, credit default swaps and all these kind of things, that there's no legitimate way to balance the ledgers of any central bank in the Western world. Which brings me back to Dr. Farrell's book. The book is rather complex, so I'm not going to try to really summarize it here. It's a short book. You probably can get it read in a few days or maybe a week if you're kind of a slow reader. For me, it's been kind of hard to finish because it just keeps popping off all these ideas, all these things that, like I said, multiple threads, multiple things that I've read before, I've had thoughts about, and it kind of brings them all together. But I really urge you to go read this. But I'm just going to pull out a couple of key points here. When you read the book, you will immediately see that, what's going on here is nothing new. This has happened over and over for thousands of years to state after state. Farrell lays out this, and explains why it's happening, but it's centered around the creation of money and the control of money. And there's something that he goes into that ties in with a post I made over on Gab and the show last week. And in those, I suggested that there is a perception that bankers rule the world, and everyone acts this way. Everyone will tell you that money controls everything. What I suggested, however, was that while that was the perception and thus the way the world saw things, the reality is, the real reality, the actual reality, is that violence is still the deciding factor. If you control violence, then no banker is actually safe, and they will do the bidding of those who really do control the dagger, So there is something behind the bankers. There's a movement and a force behind the bankers that make these things happen. And Farrell hints at this in his book, and he's talking about something way back in history. But if you listen to this, you can't help but see the parallels to what's going on today. So let me quote the book. He's talking about the Peloponnesian War between Athens and her allies and the city-state of Sparta. He's speaking about an ancient international controller of gold and silver bullion, a hidden hand, so to speak. And he says, quote, "Once the course has been determined in various Greek city-states to issue bullion-based money, which bullion they had in scarce supply, those city-states came increasingly under the influence and sway of the foreign bullion brokers themselves, all except one, which refused to issue bullion-based coinage, Sparta. Hence one now has the basis for understanding for Sparta's well-known harshness and the military discipline that it imposed on her whole population. For if she were to maintain her independence of the money power infecting the other Greek city-states, her military had to be the best. Thus there is a hidden and much more real purpose to the infamous Peloponnesian War, a war that neither Athens nor Sparta had won and neither had lost. The war left both powerful Greek city-states exhausted, and over their prostrate bodies the servants of this same sardonic money power drew the chains of their slavery. The real underlying purpose of the Peloponnesian War was to establish private common money markets across the Greek world, totally controlled by the bankers, using modern terminology. Consequently, judging by Sparta and later by Rome itself, it seems that in ancient times there was some considerable understanding of the power inherent in precious metal money to destroy, by lending itself to manipulation, the status quo of any race or state. Now that's a long quote, but I can't help but see the parallels with what is taking place today. The situation in Ukraine is no doubt the work of those very same hidden hand through their banker agents, and it's looking increasingly more and more like this is being done not just to weaken and destroy Russia, which has tried to maintain that military dominance and that power to stay out of this, being under the sway of those very bankers. But it's being done to weaken and destroy the West along with it. So think about this. Think about what that parallel from history shows us. Like and subscribe, because that's all I got time for this week, folks. On a side note, once again, there will be a walk at the park this Sunday, 10 a.m., same place and same distance, same time. Although I'm going to jump up to a bigger pack this week, so bring something heavy to carry, and I will see you there. If you can't make it, that's okay. I will see you on the next episode.